If you're someone who survived complex trauma, that's trauma that's been repeated or ongoing. It's difficult or impossible to escape. It occurs within a personal relationship or began in childhood so that it affects your childhood development, or can be covered up or kept secret or denied. If any of that describes what you have survived, then stay tuned. I'm going to give you 8 questions to ask your therapist if you are a survivor of complex post-traumatic stress disorder. Complex post-traumatic stress disorder is different from post-traumatic stress disorder because it generally describes trauma that has been ongoing over a period of time. In those cases, not just any therapist is going to work for you. I've had people say that they've been in therapy and quit because they weren't getting anywhere. They didn't feel like they were progressing. One complaint I heard many times is that they were repeating the trauma story over and over and over again to no avail. They didn't feel like they were healing. They didn't feel like they were moving forward in that process. So I'm going to give you 8 questions to ask your therapist before you hire them, if you're a survivor of complex post-traumatic stress disorder. Question number 1. Ask your therapist how many clients they've treated for cPTSD. If they say they've treated no clients, then that's a deal breaker. But if they've had experience at all with dealing with complex post-traumatic stress disorder, they might be a good candidate for your therapist. Question number 2. Ask if they know the difference between trauma and complex trauma. At the top of this, I explained what complex trauma was. If they don't know the difference between trauma and complex trauma, deal breaker, move on. Question number 3. Ask what they do if they realize you need more treatment than they can offer. You don't want the answer to be that they drop you as a patient or they don't have any referrals for you in that situation. You want somebody who is able to refer you to mental health professionals who can help you. If they have no referrals or, if I can't treat you, I drop you, just move on right now because you don't need that kind of drama in your progression. Number 4, ask the therapist how often they offer appointments. This is important. You don't even want to start with a therapist whose appointment schedule doesn't accommodate yours. So, for instance, if you need weekly meetings and they don't offer that, then move on. If you need meetings on weekends and they don't offer that, move on. That kind of thing. You don't want this to be any kind of situation where it's going to conflict with your daily life. 5. Ask the therapist how they'd handle your treatment should they go on leave, extended vacation, or if something comes up and they can't continue the treatment plan as scheduled. You want somebody who has a continuation of services available to you. They know to whom they're going to refer you in their absence. Leaving you without an alternative for treatment is a non-starter here. For you to have a situation like that could be very dangerous or hinder your healing. So you want to make sure that there's always going to be another therapist available for when your therapist, your routine therapist, is not available. Number 6, ask if they understand about dissociation. Now, dissociation is a mental process that trauma survivors can have that causes them to disconnect from their thoughts, their feelings, their memories, or sense of identity. This is normal as you progress through your therapy. So if you have a therapist who doesn't understand that dynamic for you, then they could misunderstand it as you're being resistant to treatment or you're not being cooperative in treatment. It could lead to them breaking the therapy relationship or dropping you as a patient, and that's not what you need at that point. You need somebody who understands dissociation and understands how to move you through that in therapy. Number 7, ask how long they believe it'll take to heal the complex trauma. If they give you a time like, oh yeah, 1 or 2 years, move on. Because what does that tell you? That should tell you that they're not going to be truthful or forthcoming in your treatment progression. If they know about dealing with cPTSD, then they're going to know that there's no timeline on that healing. They've got to know, oh, I can promise you that I'll have you healed in 6 months. I can have you healed in 2 years. No, this is a progression. Yes, you don't want to get stuck where you're not moving through that progression, but you also need a therapist who understands that they cannot put a timeline on this. And finally, number 8, ask your therapist if they believe you will heal. You're going to know in the body language whether or not they think you're a hopeless case or a lost cause. If they harbor any thoughts that you will remain a patient forever, then you need to move on. The whole idea of therapists is for them to put themselves out of a job where you're concerned. They want to move you through this healing process. They want to understand the dynamics of your type of trauma. But the whole idea is not to have you run into them every time you run into a crisis in life, or you run into a dissociative episode or something triggers or whatever. They should be giving you tools to apply in the moment in your everyday life so that you can navigate these challenges on your own. Now, I'm not saying that you should never have a therapist. I'm not saying that this therapist thing is not the perfect thing for people who are in cPTSD. I'm just saying that the whole goal should be to empower you, to make you more confident with dealing with your triggers, to make you understand what's going on with you when you get a dissociative incident that's happening in your mind where you're disconnected from stuff, to help you to know when you're doing that and have tools to deal with not going there again. We want to help you to heal. Therapists are not there for you to always have to lean on them as a crutch. So if they're saying that they can do this, it's like, name that tune. I can name that tune in 2 notes. I can name that tune in 3 notes. I can get you healed in 3 months. I can get you healed in 3 years. There's no timeline on it. And no therapist should be telling you that. A therapist has got to have the best positive understanding of your situation and also believe that you can heal. You do not want to sit before a therapist who thinks you're a lost cause or thinks you're going to be in therapy forever. If that therapist has that kind of idea about you, then they're not the therapist for you. Now, I'm going to give you a bonus one. We've talked about number 8, but also understand that any therapist out there is not necessarily a good match for you. I know some people who don't want to be in therapy with a male, or they don't want to be in therapy with a female. And then you got this whole personality dynamic going on. If you feel like this person is not the one for you, or is not a good fit, or you can't trust this person, or you can't build this therapeutic relationship with this person, something in your gut makes you feel like that this is not that person, then don't ignore that. It's not that there's necessarily anything wrong with them, but as we know, there are certain situations, certain types of trauma that we've dealt with, certain personalities that might have been involved in that give us pause in our guts, and you'll never trust that person if that's what you're getting. Now, this is not saying that we can't have these things where we're triggered by certain personalities and that person reminds us of some knucklehead in the past. Okay, but is that the person in the here and now? Is it their fault that they remind you of somebody in the past? Anyway, I hope that these 8 questions to ask your therapist will be beneficial for you in choosing your therapist. And whether you're choosing somebody that's doing it virtually online or whether you're going to somebody's office, be sure to ask these questions before you get involved in that relationship, because it could mean the difference between your success and your frustration. I'm Dr. Linda F. Williams. And always remember that your greatest power is realizing the truth of who you are. Know that truth. Hey, if you like what you see here today, please subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so that you know when we upload, and like and share the video. Thanks.